Hey there. Welcome to the 8th edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour. We got so much stuff this time. We got old school Canadian wrestling. We got news about the old time NWA and old time WWWWW. Oh, WF. We got listening feedback from all over the world. And we got Silvano Souza. It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Hey, Silvano Souza could go a little bit. Come on now. Hi, everybody. It's Bob Smith, formerly with Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and who wrote for a bunch of other wrestling magazines. And this is the 8th edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour. We're so glad to have you with us. We're going to have a fun, upbeat show. We got a guest for you. He's going to appear in just a couple of moments. But before we get started, I just want to comment on something that really disturbed me that I just saw yesterday as I taped this. I'm taping this on the Sunday before the Friday when the show comes out, and someone on Twitter posted an independent wrestling card of a Wild Wrestling Federation that showed a female wrestler bumping another female wrestler off a balcony onto the ring apron, and it looked like she almost killed her. It really did. The person doing the bumping, a heavy-set female wrestler, was screaming like, I did it, I'm a monster, I'm an animal, I got her. While fans were screaming the usual expletives and cooing and just chortling over the fact that, wow, what a bump. While other people on Twitter saw the clip and said, did she die? Is she dead? Come on, indie wrestling. Come on. You could do a lot better than this. First, we had the male wrestlers risking life and limb. Now we have the female wrestlers doing it too. And they shouldn't have to do it. If you're told better stories, you wouldn't have to resort to predetermined, dangerous bumps that are going to get somebody killed one of these days. If I sound angry, I am. Stop it. Stop it immediately. I'm tired of looking at it. I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of seeing YouTube clips of wrestlers maiming each other for $50 payoffs. It's enough. Learn from the forefathers of wrestling how to book. Learn how to get drama. Learn how to do comedy. Learn all of it. But you can do it without hurting each other for real. I don't know if the young lady who fell off the balcony got hurt or not. It's not even the point. Point is, within an eyelash, right or wrong, she could have really hurt herself. Enough of this garbage. Enough of garbage wrestling. Enough. I've had it. Had it up to my eyeballs. Professional wrestling has always been a sport that, while it was kind of underground, at least it didn't insult your intelligence. We have stuff like this, plus the leap onto the floor while 6 or 7 wrestlers stand there for more than a minute waiting for it to happen. Do better. It sucks. It's not exciting. And like I said on our last episode, it's stupid. Knock it off now. Before state athletic commissions wise up, get smart, and start banning these clown shows. Jim Cornette calls them, what are they, outlaw mud shows? But you know what? He's being too nice. He usually is. I don't know what to say. I'm outraged. And, they panned on this clip over to fans who were chortling and laughing and like, ooh, this is great. Ooh. Wrestling fans, you're part of the problem too. Modern wrestling fans, current wrestling fans, I should say. You're part of the problem. You shouldn't be encouraging this type of behavior. When somebody gets hurt, you're going to be at fault by proxy. I don't want to see professional wrestlers get hurt. They're the greatest athletes on the planet. They work hard. They give up their whole lives just to be good enough to work on an indie show somewhere. It's the toughest sport there is. Why make it tougher? Why make the opportunity for injury all that much greater? Let's get smart, please. And I'm not talking about smart fans. Can we use our God-given intelligence to put on a better, more dramatic show without hurting each other? I rest my case. Okay, our guest today is somebody I've been waiting to get on the show for a while, but we had to get our schedules to jibe. It's Mr. Liam Savage, who you may know from his previous podcast. How you doing?
Doing all right, Mob. Just really excited to be on here and really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, we've talked about it for a long time. Of course, your previous gig was Front Row Material with Mikey Whipwreck and Jerry Lynn. And how was that experience? And why are we both podcasting refugees, as it were?
So the experience, and it's kind of an interesting story. I'll try not to be too long, but what happened was they weren't even really on the show. So what happened was they had left the show on a hiatus, which ended up being permanent, which we didn't know. The host of the show asked if anybody would like to come in and kind of help substitute. He tried a few people out, didn't really work, and then he came up with an idea for a panel. So, I came on with a few other people, and I was a constant for about a year doing that. So I would help do that, and I was helping edit the videos for the show to put on YouTube and for our YouTube channel and all that. Jerry and Mikey came on every now and then just to say hi and got to talk to them a little bit, and that was great. But what ended up happening was the host had a bit of a problem keeping up with the product, keeping up with just his demands doing the show with his current job, and everything kind of went on hiatus. And so I said, okay, well, just let me know if everything comes back together. He said, oh yeah, definitely, I'll let you know. And then what happened was he started it back up with one of the other guys that was on the show, which I wasn't a big fan of. He wasn't a big fan of me, and basically told me, yeah, it's not I'll have you on at some point, don't worry. And that was months ago, and he's still doing it with the same guy. So I thought, you know what, that's fine. And he still has Jerry and Mikey's name on the podcast, which makes absolutely no sense to me. So yeah, that's that's my story with that. But it was fun, and we had a lot of great discussions on there. I came across as very opinionated, which I am, but that's just the way I am. But yeah, that's my story, I guess.
Okay. Well, you know me. I was on John Rizzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight for over a year, and now I'm not.
Yeah.
That's the story. That's basically the whole thing.
Yeah.
I wish I'm taking the high road on this. There's some circumstances lately that have got me thinking a little bit, but I'm still going to take the high road, and that's all I'm going to say about it. So when that dried up, I said, I like this. I like podcasting. Why stop?
Sure.
But the motivating factor is, I don't know if you did, but I got a whole mess of fan mail on my regular email on Facebook, Twitter saying, where are you? We liked you on the show. And I said, that's enough. If these people like me enough, maybe they'll follow me to the new podcast. And they all have. So I'm really lucky in that regard. But I like podcasting. I know you do too. And you have some designs on doing something yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, I've got some stuff in the works. I don't want to commit to announcing anything until it's actually time. As I was saying to you before the show, I kind of like to try to make sure everything is 100% before I go for it, just so I'm not kind of, putting it out piecemeal as I go, and it's not, what I would expect anybody to want to listen to. But yeah, I do have something in the works, and I will have to let everybody know when that's the case, I guess.
There you go. And you know what? When you're ready, you make sure you let me know.
Absolutely.
Because I will always announce new stuff, interesting stuff, particularly if you're doing anything old school. But even if you're not, let me know, and I'll help spread the word about that.
I appreciate that.
No problem. So you are from Canada?
I am from Canada, yes. I'm from the frozen tundra we call Canada. Yeah. Just outside of Toronto. Yeah, just outside of Toronto.
I love Canada for about 8 different reasons. I'm the world's biggest Guess Who fan in the world.
Okay.
There's other Canadian musicians like Rush and Dominic Triano and all the old school 70s stuff that I really loved, and I still do. I just read a book. There's a biography of Dominic Triano now that's fabulous. If you
Yeah.
ever want to read about the greatest guitar player nobody ever heard of, that's Dominic Troiano. But I
Sure.
digress. So anyway, I'm a big Canadian fan, and I love the country. I've been throughout it many times. Played with my band up in Canada, and learned to love it very much. So what we should talk about, since this is the Outdated Wrestling Hour, is your memories of old school Canadian wrestling and how you got hooked, what you've seen, what you've experienced.
Yeah, I always tell people that if they say, "Well, what was your first memory of wrestling?" I say, um, WUTV Buffalo Station, which we got for Fox, and Superstars of Wrestling for WWF. And probably 85, 86, I think was the first memory where I saw Kamala, and it scared the living crap out of me. As a kid, I'm just freaking out when I see this. And yeah, and then it kind of went from there. I would stay in touch with that, but I also happened to see a lot of different things. Like we were able to get Stampede Wrestling, so I got to see a lot of that. It was in the later years, so maybe not as good as it had been, but it was still pretty good. Al Tomko's Vancouver Wrestling, I got to see some of. And we also
Al
had TBS.
Tomko, wow.
Al Tomko, yeah. We also got TBS, so I was able to see the 605 Saturday show for JCP quite a bit. And yeah, so a lot of great memories. We had a lot of good access to a lot of those shows, and that's kind of where it started as far as that goes. And then
Man, that's a lot of stuff.
well, yeah, as far as TV, it was like limitless for a kid for that. But then I started to branch out once I kind of fell out of it in the early to mid 90s, kind of like a lot of people did. But I kind of came back late 95 and started to, I guess, notice that there was a lot of shows around here. So I'd go to a lot of independent shows and managed to go to quite a few WWF shows, some at the Sky Dome, and actually witnessed, I think it was Bret Hart's last event before the screw job. So it was like the day before Survivor Series. I got to see that final one, and
Wow.
everybody knew. Yeah, I guess it had leaked out because it wasn't as big then for internet wrestling, but it leaked out, so everybody knew he was leaving. So it was kind of a mixed atmosphere. A lot of people were calling him a sellout. Some people were saying, "Please don't go," and it was a whole thing. And but you gotta love the Hitman. So that's he's my favorite. So he was always there for me. I always really appreciate everything he did. So
That's a terrific memory right there.
yeah.
I mean, I had no idea he was leaving, so you were one up on me. I had no idea there was that much
Yeah,
friction at that point.
it seemed to just travel through the fans too. A lot of people, you'd just be sitting there in your seats and they'd be saying, "Oh, did you hear about the Hitman?" And no, I didn't hear. And then it would start going and going, and then before he knew it, it seemed like the whole arena knew. And then especially with Survivor Series, everybody knew at that point. That's pretty much it. It had just leaked. Um, and I don't know who did it, Meltzer or anybody else, but it got out there, and it was big news around here. I don't. A lot of people tend to think that Hitman's some huge Canadian hero. I don't totally see it that way. Everybody knew who he was, but not to the point where he was like the Hulk Hogan of Canada. I don't think it was like that, but he was definitely a celebrity. But yeah, it was very interesting to see what happened there, and we didn't really get the only thing we didn't really get was the WCW shows. We got a condensed version of Nitro every week on TV. So when he actually went to WCW, it was a little hard to watch some of his stuff, but such is life.
Actually, I think I'm full of beans. I was aware there were some hints that he'd been negotiating with WCW at that point. I
Yeah,
forgot all about that.
yeah,
But I thought it was just that. It was just every wrestler feels his way around. You never know when they're actually going to sign, but that was
sure.
obviously a no-no as far as Vince was concerned, and it all led to what happened, I guess.
Yeah, I mean there was talk for a while there, especially when he came back originally after his hiatus to WWF, and he I guess went on Raw and said, "Oh yeah, I'll be here forever." And then he signed his 20-year contract, and we know how that worked out. But yeah, I guess there was kind of feelers out back then. I used to go on the internet message boards then when everything was new, and you didn't really know what was true or what wasn't. But a lot of times, the actual news would be kind of accurate because there wasn't many people reporting it. So the time and skewing it like these days, where it's just kind of for clickbait. So you would actually find out a lot of the genuine stuff that was happening. So I had my ear to the ground, and I guess in some senses. So yeah, but that was kind of what happened with that. So
When you were looking at the different wrestling federations, I use the word federation for organization.
sure.
When you were looking at the different federations, let's say you would watch WWF and then you would watch Grand Prix or something. Did
Hmm.
you say, "Oh, this one's minor league and this one's major league"? Or did you enjoy it all on an even plateau?
I kind of didn't have a total thought about it. I would notice that when I would see, say, Al Tomko's Vancouver Wrestling, you could tell it was a little bit Bush League. Not to disparage anybody, but it was a little Bush League. But I mean,
Mhm.
how could it not be compared to WWF, which is, I guess the mecca at that point as far as production and everything else. But I did remember that when I would see the NWA on TV, I really I really liked how hard hitting it was and how it wasn't cartoonish like WWF. And
Mhm.
that was eye opening to me because I thought, you know what, like they don't have all the frills, but that's the appeal of it, and that's what makes it great. Is that it's not so over the top, a little bit here and there, but not so over the top. And I gravitated towards that because I really like the reality based storylines and wrestling, not anything completely over the top like these days where, even getting into like today's things like Bray Wyatt and all that. I don't get it. I don't get why that would even be looked at as something to do, but that's what
I don't
happens.
know how it doesn't get booed out of the building. To be honest with you,
Yeah, I
I
just
don't get it. What's the sensibility that finds that to be good? I don't get it. I will never get it.
yeah, and there's very few instances where I think it works. Like Undertaker, you couldn't have told anybody back then that that was gonna last. You couldn't. I mean,
Mhm.
as great as Mark Calloway is, you couldn't have thought that was going to be anything lasting. And look at it. And you can look at it in that sense and say, yeah, that worked, but there's a lot of stuff that didn't. And
Yeah.
you can go through history and one bad idea after another, but a lot of it came from WWF.
Mark Calloway is the ultimate example of he was so good, it superseded the stupidity.
Absolutely.
No matter what stupid shit they made him do, eventually his in ring work would trump everything they made him do. He didn't
Yeah.
even need to be a character. He's so good.
Hmm. Yeah, and
And the character, trust me, he played his character well, and they normalized him after a while with the motorcycle American
mhm.
badass period. But overall, he was so good they couldn't screw him up. They tried to, but they couldn't do it.
Yeah, and I mean it was kind of lean years as far as his WrestleMania streak started. The opponents weren't always the best, but as he went forward and then got more, placed as one of the veterans on the roster, he was looked at as he just kept getting better as he went and grew into the character. And the character you didn't have to look at it and just say, oh, it's a dead man. You could see, yeah, he has his
Right.
character going, but my God, this guy is talented. And he proved that to everybody, I think.
I mean, WCW never knew what to do with him,
Right.
but WWF made a superstar out of him.
Absolutely. You can
So
look at it
there's
like,
your difference, you know.
yeah, you can look at it
Yeah.
like Mick Foley. I mean, the Mankind character.
Right.
That was kind of interesting. I didn't think it was the greatest thing in the world, but man, I mean, everybody took to him because they realized how great the guy was and how much he cared.
Well, they let Foley's own personality seep into his characters, and
Yes,
that's what made it all work. And
absolutely.
later on, he was just plain old Mick Foley. Every bit as over as Mankind was. So,
Hmm.
once if you've got an interesting person who's a wrestler
Hmm.
who can communicate like he can, it'll come through eventually. I mean, Stone Cold Steve Austin originally was, what was he, the Widowmakers? I can't remember. He had a different name in the
Oh,
beginning.
the
The
Ringmaster.
Matchmaster, the Ringmaster. Exact.
Yeah.
Thank you. You see what I'm saying? He superseded that just by being
Hmm.
himself.
Hmm. Yeah, it
So it
just kind
all
of
works
seeped
out in
out.
the
It
end
seeped
if
out
they're good enough.
eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it overwhelms somebody, Red Roosters and Widowmakers and whatnot. That doesn't work
Yeah.
if it's too extreme.
Yeah.
And that's what's the problem with Bray Wyatt is it's too extreme.
Yeah, but it's not just that for me. It's just and I kind of sound like a lot of the, I guess, old school wrestling fans like you and myself, or myself and you. Uh, as far as just psychology needs to be gone. There's smatterings of it that you'll see. People that think, oh, there's some potential there, but it doesn't seem like ages ago, 10, 20 years ago even, where you could just look at the card and say, you know what, up and down, there's a lot of talented people on there. And I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but sometimes I just think, how did you get on the roster? And I'll see
Right.
I'll see certain people on certain shows, like, say AEW has Ricky Starks and say Powerhouse Hobbs, people like that have a lot of potential. And WWE, I've seen some people with potential, but it seems like a few and far between. And I think that's the main thing that's really missing these days is that, back in the day, not to use a quote, it was there was a plethora of just talent everywhere. And nowadays it seems like it's slim pickings and people aren't being trained properly and all that. And I don't know. That's why I kind of have to pick and choose what I watch now, and more often than not, I go back to the old school stuff. So.
Yeah, I get you. And let's digress a little bit. I just want to make the point about the Tomco promotion.
Yes.
Here's why I always have a soft spot for that promotion. I think it was the mid 80s, early 80s. We had a WWF jobber named Silvano Souza. Tomco brought him in as a title contender right off the bat. And I'm like, wow, there's a place where these guys can go and end up on television and actually talk and try to live up to their potential. So a lot of people made fun of Al Tomco as a promoter. He was willing to do stuff like that. See a little bit of talent in somebody, give him a push. Absolutely. What's wrong with that?
Nothing wrong with it. Nothing. No, it's funny because right, and it's funny because you can get someone that would, you can use the mentality big fish, small pond, whatever. But I mean, there was a lot of people back then that if they were just given the chance, they could have been a lot bigger than they were. You can look at people like, say, even George South. Someone like George South, excellent wrestler. And if you could have just, implanted him in a different territory where he could have, elevated his stock by the promoter saying, you know what, this guy's got something. But it didn't always work out for everybody. But there's some people that you just look at and go like, man, what if? What if?
Yeah. What if? I don't understand why Johnny Rodz wasn't a bigger star.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Johnny Rodz could do everything in the ring, everything, and maybe he was slightly undersized, but not to a great degree. I don't understand why only in California did they threw a turban on him, called him Java Rook with Roddy Piper. But other than that, he would go back to New York and he would be doing jobs on TV every week.
Right.
But he was too good for that. I'll never understand it. Maybe he wasn't good on the mic. I don't know. But to me, in ring, he was as good as anybody on the card. And I never understood why he never got pushed.
Yeah, and I found that a lot of times, the promoters that would really, they would take a chance on certain people. Like, I think Paul Heyman was a good example of that in ECW. He took a lot of chances on people that may not have gotten a chance otherwise. Who would have made Taz a world champion at that point? Probably not many. Not that he wasn't worthy of it, but with the stature and all that, and putting the belt on, say, Mike Awesome, who was only big in Japan, really, and bring him over and put the title on him, say, we're going to go with him. People like that. And that's what I appreciated about, ECW at the time, in which, it had its flaws, but I mean, they really gave people a chance when they thought, you know what, this guy's got something, and nobody else is going to give them a chance, but we'll give them a chance. And I really appreciated that. And you can't say that about every promotion.
Shane Douglas. Shane Douglas would not have been a world champion in WCW or WWE. No. He would not have.
No.
But at ECW, he looked and smelled and sounded like a world champion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Paul Heyman saw that.
Yep.
Yep. So it says a lot about Paul Heyman.
Absolutely. Yeah,
It really does.
I can't give him enough praise for what he did back then. Business end, not so much, but once Todd Gordon left, it kind of muddied the waters a bit. But I mean, as far as putting the right people on top, I think he did that more often than not. And Shane Douglas, great example. He had the vocal, he had the promos were down perfectly. He was an excellent wrestler. Everything was great about him, and he just couldn't stop running his mouth sometimes about certain people in the industry, which burns some bridges. But I appreciate and respect the fact that he did, because he you could trust everything he was saying, and he's one of the few wrestlers I think I've actually heard in interviews that doesn't sugarcoat, and he doesn't really lie about anything, because there's a lot of wrestlers that will tend to tell some story sometimes, and it kind of changes as the years go on. He seems like legit and everything checks out, and I'm thinking, wow, that's refreshing.
Old wrestlers are like old rock stars. As the decades go by, the memories get a little fuzzy, and I don't really blame them. Like the 70s guys who claim to have been 18-time champions and stuff.
Sure.
Maybe they were only 8-time champions in some federation, but honestly, they get a little fuzzy. Some of my favorite musicians from the 70s are interviewed now, and they're like, remember when I played with Deep Purple? No, you never played with Deep Purple. That kind of thing. It's just, it's just aging will do that to some of these guys. I forgive them. Like Hogan. Hogan has said so many things that are not close to being factual, but I'm wondering if it all got muddled in his head after 5 decades of stardom.
Good, I guess, but I that sometimes it blows my mind, the stuff he comes up with. How he gained an extra day because he went to Japan, and so he actually worked way more days than he should have in a calendar year, and we're kind of looking at him going, oh yeah, okay, that's it, sure. He's the bass player for Metallica. He auditioned. No, he didn't. Stuff sometimes you hear, and I just, okay, I can't really trust anything he's saying. So,
Well, yeah, it got pretty bad after a while. That is true.
Yeah.
So how can people get a hold of you if they want to get your take on things? Can they tweet you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. If you go to Savage Liam, so SAVAGELIAM, I do have a link on there for my link tree, so it does have other social media. I'm on my YouTube, which unfortunately got taken down due to copyright notices and all that stuff. So I'm working on a new version of that, which actually had a lot of rare wrestling on there, and a lot of people really enjoyed it, and now it's gone. So anybody that's listening to this right now and they did appreciate it, I will be back at some point. It's just going to take a while. So, but yeah, and I really appreciate you having me on. This is great because I grew up reading PWI, and it was really a good source for me finding out about other promotions and all that. And appreciate you for helping out with that,
Oh, well, I'll tell you what. I say this to everybody I talk to. PWI, I was with them for 6 years, and it will not let me go.
Yeah.
After I left that company, I got phone call after phone call after phone call of other people offering me freelance work and jobs. Even worked for WCW for a spell, which was amazing. And, Rizzy calling me after 30 years saying, you want to be in a podcast? I mean, it just won't let me go. This stuff will not let me go. So I figured if it ain't going to let me go, I'm going to go for it. And that's why I'm back on the scene and doing this. And I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate your kind comments.
Absolutely.
And we'll have you back. Would you come back sometime soon?
Sure. I'd love to.
Yeah, I would love to have you back. You know your stuff, dude. And I hope you do start another podcast, and I hope it is a major success because you deserve it. You're really good at what you do, and I appreciate you being here.
I appreciate that, Bob. Thank you very much.
No problem. It's Liam Savage, everybody. Keep that name in your head because he's going to be around, and I want you to look for him wherever he turns up. Hey, are you in the mood for something fun to do with your family? Get together for a fun and exciting time bowling at Harold Lanes in New Hyde Park, New York. Harold Lanes brings back the nostalgic atmosphere of bowling along with its fantastic cafe and bar selections. The food is not your typical bowling alley offerings. Take it from me. That's the truth. The food is delicious. Harold Lanes also offers adult and junior leagues as well as coaching classes for the kids. The kids' birthday parties, fundraisers, and adult parties are always a huge hit. Reasonably priced and conveniently located at 465 Herrick's Road in New Hyde Park, New York, Harold Lanes is open 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to midnight. You need more information? Give them a call at 516-741-8022. That's 516-741-8022 for Harold Lanes in New Hyde Park, New York. I'd like to take a moment now to focus on our listeners and what they've had to say in recent weeks. We got another very nice review from a listener who describes himself as CartDog31 on Apple Music. And he gave us 5 stars once again. We appreciate that. And it says in the headline, awesome podcast. This is a great podcast. I love the classic old school content, especially the Michigan and Indiana territory. Terry Sullivan is the best. Scott Recksteiner, Dr. Jerry Graham Jr., Mohammed Jihad Saad, Calypso Jim, Great Wojo, Bulldog, Don Kent, and Chris Carter. I loved watching the WWA. Thank you, Cart Dog. I really appreciate those nice comments, and it was fabulous having the great Terry Sullivan on our show. On a recent episode, I talked about how ad rates were going for the WWE, particularly on SmackDown, and a listener named Jason Compton, who I know from Twitter, thought I had kind of muddled my message there and confused the USA Network with Fox Network and so on and so forth. So his first comment to me was this: enjoyed the latest episode, but wanted to remind you of something, since I think you have the cause and effect flipped in the understanding of the Raw/USA relationship and programming. The network sales department is selling the ad inventory, not WWE. So while there has been some credible insider intel that ad CPM is lower for wrestling than for average programming, USA has clearly decided that they prefer Raw third-hour income, Raw third-hour license cost to replacement program income and replacement program cost. It's not that WWE needs to make up the difference. It's that USA thinks Raw at 3 hours beats other alternatives to avoid transmitting a test signal. Interesting take. And he had a lot of other very interesting things to say. A very learned, very knowledgeable wrestling fan when it comes to TV ratings. As for me, I'll just boil it down to this. I still think the WWE is going to end up putting SmackDown on another network other than Fox. I think Fox has lost too much money on the project, and I don't think the end justifies the means. But you know what? I hope I'm wrong. You may remember on a recent episode, I talked about where to find old school wrestling on cable and streaming and other things like that. And a lot of people are calling to give me addendums to what I spoke about. A listener who on Twitter is known as NJJ, his name is Jim, wrote this: Hi, Bob. The Jarrett Parsons channel is gone, but replaced with Wrestling TV channel app on Roku and Amazon Fire Stick, etc. It has Memphis, Savoldi's ICW, Southwest IWA, and much more. Well, thank you for that. Apparently, Jarrett Parsons is alive and well. There's somebody I'd love to have on the show. Anybody involved with that company, because they're doing a great job keeping old school wrestling alive on streaming. I did check out that network, and it's fabulous. And we'll have more information about that. Someone else who took the time to talk to me and write to me on Twitter is Joe Puccio. And I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Joe. Your last name, Joe Puccio on Twitter. Hey, Bob, I just listened to episode 3 on the topic. I DVR a show called Classic All-Star Wrestling each week. It's on Saturday night / Sunday morning from 12:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Channel 14 on Hamptons TV, he thinks. It's 30 minutes of old matches from the 60s through the 90s. And that's a nice little thing. It's also available on Facebook, Tubi, and the Roku channel. And he says he saw matches like this featuring Jeff Jarrett, Billy Travis, Tracy Smothers versus Paul Diamond, Pat Tanaka, King Carl Fergie, and a Michael Hayes versus Kevin Von Erich in a First Blood match from Honolulu. That sounds great. So see if you guys can check that out as well. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Really enjoyed having all of these listeners write to us, and I really enjoyed having Mr. Liam Savage on our show. He's great, isn't he? And I hope to have him back very, very soon. So this is the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Opening and closing theme is Boogie Party by Kevin MacLeod. licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. You can reach us a myriad of ways, my friends. Facebook, look for Robert Smith. We have a website, by the way, for you older fans. There's some older fans who are listening who aren't really that much into podcasts or can't, or don't want to download an app. You don't have to. Go to our website. It's outdatedwrestling.buzzsprout.com. Once again, outdatedwrestling, all one word, .buzzsprout.com. Just click a link on it. It has all of our shows listed. You can listen to 1 through 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just like that. You don't need to go to a podcasting app to hear the show. Our email is outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. Our Twitter, Bob Smith NYC. Couldn't be simpler. And if you can, leave a review or subscribe wherever you get your podcast, if you will. And I hope you enjoyed number 8. I know I did. So until next time, I leave you with the words of the Grand Wizard of Wrestling. McMahon, you've done it again.